smart decision all the time. What does the kid do?
And it's difficult because it's even more than that, right? So you're taking these kids from predominantly poor background. So you don't even have access to a suit. To the things that you need to perform at that level, because the institution can give you a ticket to go back home if your parents passed away or if something happens in your family. And then you don't have the requisite things that you need to really be on par with the other kids. So now you're put in a situation to say, I'm giving all of this to the institution. I am not getting the quality education that I was guaranteed. And instead, what I'm getting is maybe I'm there for a year, but now I have to think strategically about going out early because I might get hurt because the institution is not providing a catastrophic insurance that will enable that kid could stay a little bit longer so they don't get hurt. So if you're a kid looking up and you say, I have a chance to make $10 million in the NBA and I can stay in college and get a great education, but can get hurt, which then forfeits that $10 million. It's a very difficult decision for adults, much less an 18-year-old.
And I think adults that are coming out of a very tight, difficult economic situation, and especially, basketball dominated by African Americans. We saw in this last basketball scandal, parents doing certain things that they shouldn't have, getting money as well, and the kid's the one that's trapped in the middle of it. So if you're not getting any guidance from your parents, you're not getting any, and especially if they happen to play some of the AAU programs and everything, the coaches are there and the kids don't know about it, are being approached by shoe companies and other people. I wouldn't know what to do.
I still don't know what to do, and I'm a lot older and been through that system. I was fortunate enough to have parents that shielded me from a lot of the ugliness in the AAU culture and going through that system, trying to pick an institution and forcing me to pick an institution for the right reasons. But you need somebody to put that mirror up and really ask you pointedly what is important to you and what values are you bringing into that decision-making process.
What was that ugliness, if you can tell me, that you had to face when you were going through that program?
Some of them I can't say on the air. and some of them was really how about cutting corners, like coming to that institution by any means necessary. And really about alluding to things that were not in my moral sphere and having to decide how to navigate that as a young person who is curious and really want to partake of the world, but not to do it in some sort of a bribery situation.
Let's look ahead for just a moment. You're still involved with the NBA in various capacities, and I'm just wondering if they do away with the one and done, they just let somebody come out of high school and go right into professional basketball. What is the thought process that they're going through to make that decision? What happens to a kid if he's a high school talent and wants to go into pro ball and not go to college?
Well, I think one of the things the NBA has done really successful over the years is really expanded the G League, right? Because it gives a young person who may not be ready an opportunity to hone their skills. So I think this is part of the disservice. If a young person has no interest in going to an institution, like, why force him to do that? Because I think we tend to think of education as linear. I think of education as when you're ready. So in most instances, like most developed world, you go and you work into different fields, you discover what your interests are, then you go back to an institution and really train in a specific area that you want to have a competency in. So we have to stop pretending that somehow we're doing an athlete a service by giving him 1 year at an institution, which we know is a joke because they don't even have to go to school because there is no, by the time the requirement comes in that they have to stay another year, they're gone.
Are they doing a disservice also to the coach, also to the teammates that they might have for that 1 year? And what kind of bind does it put a coach in knowing, well, this is a great player, but I'm not going to have him very long?
Right. But it takes away the opportunity to say that as a coach, I can really coach this person to make them better, right? Because when you have them for a year, all you can do is take what they bring with them and take as much as you can as a coach and ensure that you win as much as you can. And then as your teammate, you're not having the opportunity to see that player develop over time. You're not having the opportunity to see what kind of young man that person could become, because 1 year is just simply not enough, to develop a player.
We have a little over a minute left before we have to break. How smart is the NBA in being able to evaluate a one-and-done type of player? Because I think about Pearl Washington that came out of Syracuse. Everybody thought he was a can't-miss type of player, and he washed out of the NBA.
And I think that's the thing we have to be okay with as the NBA. And I know Adam Silver is very good about really evaluating his decision. We have to say, okay, it's okay for a player to fail if he doesn't make it into the NBA. That's okay, because there is no guarantee, there's no safety net in professional sports. You go in, you play to the best of your abilities, and if you can't cut it, then you get cut. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is like, do that kid has the opportunity now to go back to college?
Yeah, and also how smart is the NBA about putting their money where it really needs to do, about educating them aside from basketball, but just in life in general when they come in that young.
And I think that's the most important thing. We have an opportunity to really transform a young person when they come into the league. We have resources. They have resources. So it's now not only the league and the union, it's also the responsibility of that player to spend some money. I always tell players, you can pay for a professor to be in your room every single night of the day. I mean, a professor is about $65,000, $70,000. You could do that in your sleep. That's what you spend at a club.
In about 20 seconds, are they the kids you finding are becoming more educated about what's happening?
I think so. I think LeBron has been the model. When you look at what he has done with someone who didn't go to college and his ability to educate the people around him and really empower them, and you see him reaching out to mentors like Bill Gates and all the other people. He can put in a phone call and talk to people at the top of the industry, and they will talk to him because he's a professional athlete.
We're talking with Adonal Foyle. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about the NBA and NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. He's had some very interesting things to say as we continue on Sports Byline. You'll take care of that? Okay. Okay, here we go. Adonal Foyle is with us in the studio. He played in the NBA for 13 seasons after going to Colgate University. He was an academic All-American there, and he played 10 of those 13 years with the Golden State Warriors after being a first-round pick. 8th overall, finished up with the Orlando Magic. I mentioned before the break about NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. I find him to be the most aware, forward-thinking commissioner that I've seen in a long time. Now, I know work and have dealings with the NBA, but I think anybody that looks at what he's done, the way he thinks, the things that he says, feels the same way. Tell me about this man.
I think more than anything else, what I liked about him is that he listens, first and foremost. He's willing to go into the pit and listen to what's happening and really get a sense before he makes decisions. He's a leader by consensus. He wants to get the pulse of not only the ownership, he wants to get the pulse of the players, the union. And I think that for me, what I like about him is that over the years, you see him shift on a topic, and he's willing to say, you know what, I thought about this initially, and now I have more information in which I think I can make a more informed decision. So you see that. He has been really about also growing the sport beyond the borders of the United States. So he's been about expanding the sport globally more so than any other time in our history. When I first got into the league in 1997, I think we had 15 players. Now a quarter of the NBA is international players. And you see that expansion, what they've been doing right now with the academies all over the world, from China to India. And they're now procuring a new generation of players. So he wants to see this game become a truly global sport.
Yeah, I also think he has a feel for the player. He happens to be a white man in a sport that's dominated by African Americans. He was at a conference recently, and he said something that kind of made me think, and then I kind of smiled right after that, and I think you know what I'm going to say. We are living in a time of anxiety. I think it's a direct result of social media. A lot of players are unhappy. And at first your reaction is, wait a minute, you're making multi-millions of dollars and you're unhappy? What the hell do you have to be unhappy about? Can you enlighten and give some depth to what he was trying to say?
So I think in many ways what he's saying is that, see, if you take a kid, right, so initially when you take a young person out of their circumstances, out of the communities, they're gone forever from that community. But I think because of the advent of social media, I could now stay in touch with everything that is happening in the Caribbean. I have a way to interact interact with that community. And I feel the anxiety. So when you take an issue like police brutality, so players they're on social media, they're hearing from people they grew up with that are dying, right? So one of the things that they start doing is that it brings them closer. So they didn't lose their communities, they expanded them, and they expanded them into the current circumstances. So what I find amazing is that was such an astute comment, and people kind of instinctively reacted negative to it. But when you think about how much of like our world that we can see and how much of it we can interact on a global scale, you realize the impact. Steph Curry is unbelievably popular in China, right? I mean, so not only in his backyard, right? He is popular all over the world. So he's a global athlete. But with that, you get the pressures, not just from the people in your community, but from the global sphere. So I think that that's what he was getting at, is that because of this interconnectedness of our world, our players are put under a magnifying glass of salt, but there's also a lot of stress that comes with that.
And I think another thing, too, is that you take a look at Steph Curry, you take a look at Kevin Durant, and since they're here in the Bay Area, I know them pretty well, but I have seen that players have changed. They used to be looked upon as just being guys that could dribble the ball and put it in the basket. And now they have interest. They have business interests. They make their announcements on the internet, not through the PR department of the team. And this whole dynamic has changed a great deal. And I think that the public and the sports fans are still getting used to what they are. They're seeing them as people, really, today.
Right, because as a player, you now have a responsibility not just to your sport, but to your community at large. And you now have a mechanism by which you could have such an impact. We always thought of athletes as role model, right? But I think in many ways, we didn't really want them to be role models because we wanted them to just play. But now what they're saying is that we have an opportunity to transform the landscape in which we find ourselves. We have an opportunity to really have input on other things other than our sport, and things that may affect us in our society at large. And we should be able to talk about it as well as go out and play basketball, just like everybody else does in their daily life.
I will tell you this, I cannot watch an NBA All-Star game. I'm sorry, I haven't watched for years. First of all, it's not true competition. Now, I don't want to pick on the NBA because I also can't watch the NFL's All-Star game as well. But Silver raised the idea of replacing the All-Star game with a midseason or preseason tournament in which teams could compete for a separate championship. And I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, I can't watch the All-Star game either. I want to go block every shot that I see. But to me, that's the interesting thing, right? Is that you could see a problem and you can do nothing about it, or you can see a problem and say, how could we approach this problem? And I think that interconnectedness between the union, the players, and the ownership, and saying, how could we make the All-Star game something more meaningful? Whether or not I think this concept would work, I think at this point is irrelevant. My excitement is that they're willing to discuss it, because I think once you open up the flow to different ideas, you might be surprised what you find. You might be surprised that more and more people may have input that may create something much more meaningful.
Yeah, I want to also ask you about something else the commissioner talked about the difference between this generation of players and those in the days of Michael Jordan. He said that the Jordan-era teams had more camaraderie, quoting Isaiah Thomas, championships are won on the bus. Now, there was big money made, not as big as it is today, back when Michael was playing, of course. But has money changed the game that much, or what is it that the players are different than in the Jordan era?
Well, I would say that the players are different in this particular sense, is that they go on vacation together. I mean, that is something that we...
they own the resort.
They own the resort, right? We never did that back in the day. So there was always that sense of, like, competitiveness on and off the floor. And what you see now, players are willing to talk to each other. They're willing to figure out, what's going on with them. And they're willing to basically go into business ventures that are in ways that is looking beyond the sports. I think you see in them really think about the transition before they transition. I think the older players, we were a little bit longer in the tube. We wanted to play for as long as we possibly could, and then we think about what's the next step. LeBron is thinking about movies. He's thinking about what the next part is going to be after I walk away from this sport. So I think in some sense,